give what you can, even if your allies draw lines in the sand. And dig, always dig a little deeper. Sometimes it's hard to be my brother's keeper. Lord, your allies draw lines in the sand. And baby, I am home in the wake of your skin, and it's crazy how we wear a ceremony. Always be open to your path and your journey. Yes, she cradles my loneliness, a home at a forest nest. Universal test, feel the weight of my love. Put your hand on my chest and rest in the cradle of my arms. The battle that we face is the place where our scars come from. And to pick up the gun, my love, we are destined to teach these ones to be brave and never run away. Courage is birthed from the womb on the first light of day. Yeah, the day you were born, you came out perfect, never meant to be torn in silence. Never been so loud in the violence, never been so proud of our people. When we're fighting for a change, not afraid to lose it all. Despite all the rage, we are animals and we cannot be caged. Provoke us to fight, so we burn a little sage and write poetry. Wiser than the enemy will ever be. The minority and authority. Are you here to protect or arrest me? I can't tolerate the hate and I'm losing sleep. Can't breathe cause they're choking out a war in me. Immorality, yeah. Love letters to God. I wonder if she reads them or if they get lost in the stars, stars and stars. Yeah. So many parts to a heavy heart. If there's no beginning, then where would you start? Start, where would you start? Human souls, so we carve them into story-totem pose. Cause we're always searching for a certain goal, a pattern of physics, a role. Don't believe how you're told, and open up your fist. A misconception, you can fight like this and praise. With the power of prayer, of God's on our side, we can take the stairs to the heavens. Flipping through my chapter 7, I live with the snakes in the great deception, no court. In this country for men who steal from the mother on paper with pen. And we're tripping down a red dirt road and we're asking, is this the way we should go? Kissing soft top feet, oh my God, this we walk the earth, baby, yeah, we got this focus. And it's redirected, grateful, and I'm resurrected, stubborn. But I know the way, you're the skin on my drum to your rhythm, I will sway, take my hand, I won't lead you astray. We will not go down today's grandma's here, and she says persevere. Take a walk in her mox, leads a trail of tears, and our fears are the same as the everywhere fears. And I'm the pain of a
right, welcome to Bold Like a Leopard. We're going to talk about some major landmark Supreme Court decisions today. Of course, everybody's talking about Dobbs versus Jackson, which overturned Roe v. Wade, but there's a number of other major decisions that came down during the last week of the Supreme Court. I don't know if they're out of session yet. I thought that they do um, their all their cases until the end of June, but besides Dobbs, so there's some major decisions. We're going to talk about one of them in depth, but there is also, so let me put this up here, a decision that's sort of worrying called Vega v. Taco, which says that LA County Deputy Vega questioned Teco at the medical center where Teco worked regarding the reported sexual assault of a patient. Vega did not inform Teco of his Miranda rights. Teco eventually provided a written statement and was prosecuted for unlawful sexual penetration. His written statement was admitted against him at trial after the jury returned a verdict of not guilty. Teco sued Vega under 42 U.S.C. 1983. The Ninth Circuit held that the use of an unmirandized statement against a defendant in a criminal proceeding violated the Fifth Amendment and could support a Section 1983 claim. The Supreme Court reversed the violation of the Miranda rules does not provide a basis for a Section 1983 claim. In Miranda, the court concluded that additional procedural protections were necessary to prevent the violation of the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Miranda did not hold the violation of the rules it established necessarily constitutes a Fifth Amendment violation. The Miranda rules have been described as constitutionally based with constitutional underpinnings, but a Miranda violation is not the same. So it's basically saying that don't talk to the police unless you have consulted an attorney, or else you could end up, um, incriminating yourself. Okay, it doesn't matter whether they've arrested you or not. So that has been decided. That is actually one of the more under-emphasized ones, and I don't know exactly. Let me see here. So let me check this out. So uh, that was decided under a. Let me see here. One, two, three. So that was also a 6-3 opinion. A lot of the opinions are now down the ideological division between one end of the court, which is the more conservative, originalist end of the court, led by Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, and the other end of the court, which is now headed by Sotomayor. Well, it's just three people. It's Sotomayor, Kagan, and soon to be Ketanji Brown Jackson. So all of those decisions were on, I believe, 6-3 margins. We're also going to read a little bit of the decision on Dobbs v. Jackson, and another one, which is interesting, not really as interesting as the others, was Nance v. Ward, which says a prisoner who challenges a state's proposed method of execution under the Eighth Amendment. The Eighth Amendment is against cruel and unusual punishment, must identify a readily available alternative method that would significantly reduce the risk of severe pain. Nance brought suit under 42 U.S.C. 1983 to enjoin Georgia from executing him by lethal injection, the only method of execution that Georgia now authorizes. Nance proposes death by firing squad, a method currently approved by 4 other states. The 11th Circuit held that Nance could advance his method of execution claim only by a habeas petition. So that's an interesting ruling. Obviously, not quite the same provenance. So, Dr. Simate Abortion is here. Thank you for joining me in the chat. I don't know who you are. And Larry is back. Larry lives, of course, in a very blue state. So I'd like to hear his opinion on the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and also the overturning a well, basically, um, so the Dobbs decision is the one that people were most in suspense about. That was regarding Roe v. Wade. The other decision that came down the pike that many people who are firearms enthusiasts are very pleased about is the NYSRPA v. Bruin decision. So, what this basically did was ensure that Americans who own firearms are allowed to carry them outside of their homes. There are still restrictions that I find to be absurd out there, such as magazine restrictions. So, in the state of New York, you may now carry outside of your home. You may also, I think, well, you can carry in your car and things like that. However, you can't have a magazine that is, I believe, more than 10 rounds. And you also have to have, I think they do have an assault weapons ban over there. So, so they have like all these other restrictions. That didn't really help in the Buffalo shooting, right? So you can have as many restrictions as you want, and then people still break the law. So it says the state of New York makes it a crime to possess a firearm without a license. An individual who wants to carry a firearm outside his home may obtain an unrestricted license to have and carry a concealed pistol or revolver if he can prove the proper cause exists. An applicant satisfies the proper cause requirement if he can demonstrate a special need for self-protection distinguishable from that of the general community. So that language is absurd. It basically says you have to be a special class above the rest of the community in order to be covered under the Second Amendment. Like it basically means you have to be special in order to get one of the Bill of Rights. I don't know how a law like that stood for so long. New York residents who's unsuccessfully applied for unrestricted licenses to carry a handgun in public, based on their generalized interest in self-defense, challenged the proper cause requirement. The Supreme Court reversed the dismissal of the suit. New York's proper cause requirement violates the 14th Amendment by preventing law-abiding citizens with ordinary self-defense needs from exercising their Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms in public for self-defense. The quote, historical evidence from antebellum America does demonstrate that the manner of public carry was subject to reasonable regulation, but none of these limitations on the right to bear arms operated to prevent law-abiding citizens with ordinary self-defense needs from carrying arms in public for that purpose. The court stated that the constitutional right to bear arms in public for self-defense is not a second-class right, subject to an entirely different body of rules than the other Bill of Rights guarantees. The exercise of other constitutional rights does not require individuals to demonstrate a government officer's some special need. So that's, like, think about how ridiculous that rule was. You basically had to say, oh, I'm under special threat from a person. And, and I believe that even if you have, let's say, a restraining order against somebody who's threatening you actively, how long does it take for them to approve that permit, right? There's a long time in Ohio that I know people who were applying for permits to carry, and they couldn't get them for weeks and weeks and weeks. They couldn't get an appointment to see a sheriff's deputy. They had to go to counties that were, 5 counties away from here. Larry says, just throws it back to the states. 10th Amendment. Here in California, the legislature is debating legalizing infanticide, like out to 4 weeks. So that's to be expected. I know that. So many people were saying, well, this decision, going back to the Dobbs decision, it ends the practice of abortion in America. That's flat out untrue, and we're going to get to that pretty soon. The dissent in this Bruin case, it was very. By the way, I put Brule in the comments. In the title, so I'm going to change that. But that's my bad. I thought it was Brule. But this decision was dissented by Breyer in one of his last dissents. He's retiring. He says, um, in 2020, so that this is where you see the difference between the two streams of thought on law. There's activist people from the bench who say, well, the court basically, our job is to protect the public from the needs of the day. Like we need to basically do things that the legislature and the president and the executive aren't willing to do because we're the court. We have to solve the problems from here. That's not what the original, um, the founders of the country believed. But there's a tendency to say, yeah. So why should I uphold laws that are actually hurting society? And that's what I think that the activist wing often does. They basically legislate from the bench. They try to solve problems that are not solved by the legislature and the executive from the bench. Um, in 2020, 45,222 Americans were killed by firearms. Then he cites CDC statistics. Since the start of this year, there have been 277 reported mass shootings, an average of more than one per day. Then he cites the gun violence archive. Many states have tried to address some of the dangers of gun violence just described by passing laws that limit, in various ways, who may purchase, carry, or use firearms of different kinds. The court today severely burdens states' efforts to do so. It invokes the Second Amendment to strike down a New York law regulating the public carriage of concealed handguns. In my view, that decision rests upon several serious mistakes. First, the court decides this case on the basis of the pleadings without the benefit of discovery or an evidentiary record. As a result, it may well rest its decision on a mistaken understanding of how New York's law operates in practice. So that's flat out. I mean, that's actually ignoring what happened. What I believe happened in this case was there were two applicants for these firearms permits in New York State, in upstate New York, and they were denied, but regardless of the fact that they were legal, law-abiding citizens. They'd never had any sort of criminal action put against them, criminal legal action against them. So it's like they're ignoring what actually happened. The people who applied for these permits didn't have any criminal record. There was no reason to deny them the permit other than the fact they didn't qualify for this special privileged position that the state of New York forces people to qualify for. So hold on. The second, the court wrongly limits its analysis to focus nearly on exclusively on history. It refuses to consider the government interests that justify a challenged gun regulation, regardless of how compelling those interests may be. The Constitution contains no such limitation, and neither do our precedents. Third, the court itself demonstrates the practical problems with its history-only approach. In applying that approach to New York's law, the court fails to correctly identify and analyze the relevant historical facts. Only by ignoring an abundance of historical evidence supporting regulations restricting the public carriage of firearms can the court conclude that New York's law is not consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. In my view, when courts interpret the Second Amendment, it is constitutionally proper, indeed often necessary, for them to consider the serious dangers and consequences of gun violence that lead states to regulate firearms. The Second Circuit has done so and has held that New York's law does not violate the Second Amendment. And then it cites a court case from 2012. I would affirm that holding. At a minimum, I would not strike down the law based only on the pleadings, as the court does today, without first allowing for the development of an evidentiary record and without considering the state's compelling interest in preventing gun violence. I respectfully dissent. And then he has this dissent that he goes into, and I think that's one of the real idiotic underpinnings of these laws. So with all of those laws, with all of the restrictions that states like New York have put on carrying a weapon, gun violence is out of control in many states, like Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania has a high level of gun ownership, legal gun ownership, but they also have a high level of illegal gun use in cities like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, and some of the mid-level cities like Harrisburg. So what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to say that, oh, if you are trying to legally carry a firearm, you have to make all these special qualifications. You have to jump through hoops, and then in the meantime, just cope. Don't don't worry. We'll come get you after 5 hours after the police are done. Dragging away somebody who is protesting at a drag queen story hour or something. That's really the problem with the way that American liberalism views the law. They don't really care about actual gun violence unless it has to do with a mass shooting. There's a lot of shootings that happen day in, day out that have nothing to do with these ones that make it to the headlines, like Uvalde and Buffalo. As bad as they are, right? So I'm not trying to diminish the horrific carnage of any of these shootings that happens. I think that Americans should, they should be able to do as much as they can to be safe, regardless of their background. Whether they're black, white, or Hispanic, men or women, whatever their sexual orientation, whatever, religion. So if I don't care what religion people have, I don't think that we should be restricting people's ability to feel safe and be safe. But passing gun regulations actually is not the way to do it. In fact, today, let me pull this up. I actually saw this on my phone. This was rather, not expected, but let's say things like this happen for a reason. Norway shaken by attack that kills 2 during Pride Festival. A gunman opened fire in Oslo's nightlife district early Saturday, killing 2 people and leaving more than 20 wounded in what the Norwegian Security Service called an Islamist terrorist attack during the capital's annual LGBTQ Pride Festival. Investigators said the suspect, identified as a 42-year-old Norwegian citizen originally from Iran, was arrested after opening fire at 3 locations in downtown Oslo. How was he able to get to 3 locations, fire on people? I thought they have it all. There's no gun ownership in Norway. I thought it's all, simpatico. I mean, am I wrong? So, no. Apparently, if you let unfettered migration of immigrants from nations where gun violence is a way of life, you could have a problem there if you're trying to do a nice gay pride festival or something. And that's what happened today. Condolences to the people of Norway and the victims. Investigators said the suspect, identified as a 42-year-old Norwegian citizen originally from Iran. Okay, I read that paragraph already. Police said 2 men, one in his 50s and the other in his 60s, died in the shootings. 10 people were treated for serious injuries, but none of them was believed to be in life-threatening condition. 11 others had minor injuries. It must have been the lutefisk. Isn't that some sort of like pickled fish dish or something? Yeah. So that's a funny comment, Larry. They gave him lutefisk when he was looking for kebab. Or if they're from Iran, maybe they didn't cook his rice right. The Norwegian Police Security Service raised its terror alert level from moderate to extraordinary, the highest level, after the attack, which sent panicked revelers fleeing into the streets or trying to hide from the gunman. So I don't know what the answer is. People just have to be more alert and more aware. It's not a very good situation that the world is in right now, and what are you supposed to do? Like, just passing a law is not going to solve the problem. So we went over Nance versus Ward. We went over Vega v. Tico. We went over Brule. So Dobbs v. Jackson. We're just going to read some of the opinion. There was apparently Arizona at the Arizona Capitol building. So there was some crazy protest that happened, and they say that there was basically like an insurrection. So we'll see if that's true. Obviously, I don't want to like buy into a lot of like the hyperbole that people are saying, but we'll see, and you guys can judge with me. Um, Mississippi's Gestational Age Act provides that, except in a medical emergency or in the case of a severe fetal abnormality, a person shall not intentionally or knowingly perform or induce an abortion of an unborn human being if the probable gestational age of the unborn human being has been determined to be greater than 15 weeks. Um, the Fifth Circuit affirmed an injunction prohibiting the enforcement of the act. The Supreme Court reversed, overruling its own precedent. The Constitution does not confer a right to abortion. The authority to regulate abortion belongs to state representatives, citing the faulty historical analysis. That's in quotes. So this is a majority opinion by Justice Alito. Citing the faulty historical analysis in Roe v. Wade, the justices concluded that the right to abortion is not deeply rooted in the nation's history and tradition. Regulations and prohibitions of abortion are governed by the same, quote, rational basis standard of review as other health and safety measures. The justices analyzed great common law authorities concerning the historical understanding of ordered liberty. Attempts to justify abortion through appeals to a broader right to autonomy and to define one's concept of existence could license fundamental rights to illicit drug use, prostitution, and the like. So I think that's an interesting... I don't know why he brought in prostitution. So I think prostitution's a little... It's a different issue. I think that there are like interesting opinions about should prostitution be legalized, because as long as it's sort of a what would you call it, like an act that is just a commercial transaction between two consenting adults. But the reality is a lot of prostitution is compelled. There are there's human trafficking that's involved. So you can't just blanketly permit all of those things. Noting, quote, the critical moral question posed by abortion, the justices compare their decision to Brown v. Board of Education in overruling Plessy v. Ferguson, which was also egregiously wrong. Roe conflated the right to shield information from disclosure and the right to make and implement important personal decisions without government interference, and produced a scheme that, quote, looked like legislation, including a, quote, glaring deficiency in failing to justify the distinction in between the pre- and post-viability abortions. The subsequently described, quote, undue burden test is unworkable in defining a line between permissible and unconstitutional restrictions. Traditional reliance interests are not implicated because getting an abortion is generally an, quote, unplanned activity. And reproductive planning could take virtually immediate account of any sudden restoration of state authority to ban abortions. The court emphasized that nothing in this opinion should be understood to cast doubt on precedents that do not concern abortion. Mississippi's Gestational Age Act is supported by the Mississippi legislature's specific findings, which include the state's asserted interest in protecting the life of abortion. So there is a dissent. I'll read some of the dissent. It's probably pretty long. It is by Justice Elena Kagan, and she says, Justice Breyer, Justice Sotomayor, and Justice Kagan dissenting. For half a century, Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Sorry. This screen it's never the right size. I have a work computer that I think is the same, and I have the same problem. And Roe v. Wade, Congress passed the partial birth... Hold on, sorry. Now I'm on the wrong page. Okay, so let me take it from the top. For half a century, Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood of southeastern PA v. Casey have protected the liberty and equality of women. Roe held and Casey affirmed The Constitution safeguards a woman's right to decide for herself whether to bear a child. Roe held and Casey reaffirmed that in the first stages of pregnancy, the government could not make that choice for women. The government could not control a woman's body or the course of a woman's life. It could not determine what the woman's future would be. Respecting a woman as an autonomous being and granting her full equality meant giving her substantial choice over this most personal and most consequential of all life decisions. Roe and Casey well understood the difficulty and the divisiveness of the abortion issue. The court knew that Americans hold profoundly different views about the, quote, morality of terminating a pregnancy even in the earliest stage. Casey, oh, whoops. And the court recognized that the state has legitimate interest from the outset of the pregnancy in protecting the life of the fetus that may become a child. So the court struck a balance, as it often does when values and goals compete. It held that the state could prohibit abortions after fetal viability so long as the ban contained exceptions to safeguard a woman's life or health. It held that even before viability, the state could regulate the abortion procedure in multiple and meaningful ways. But until the viability line was crossed, the court held a state could not impose a substantial obstacle on a woman's right to elect the procedure as she, not the government, thought proper in light of all the circumstances and complexities of her own life. Today, the court discards the balance. It says that from the very moment of fertilization, a woman has no rights to speak of. A state can force her to bring a pregnancy to term, even at the steepest personal and familial cost. An abortion restriction, the majority holds, is permissible whenever rational, the lowest level of scrutiny known to law, and because, as the court has often stated, protecting fetal life is rational. States will feel free to enact all manner of restrictions. The Mississippi law issue here bars abortions after the 15th week of pregnancy. Under the majority's ruling, though, another state's law could do so after 10 weeks, or 5, or 3, or 1, or again from the moment of fertilization. States have already passed such laws in anticipation of today's ruling. More will follow. Some states have enacted laws extending to all forms of abortion procedure, including taking medication in one's own home. They have passed laws without any exceptions for when the woman is the victim of rape or incest. Under those laws, a woman will have to bear her rapist child or a young girl her father's, no matter if doing so will destroy her life. So too, after today's ruling, some states may compel women to carry to term a fetus with severe physical anomalies. For example, one afflicted with Tay-Sachs disease, sure to die within a few years of birth. I think that is a pretty cynical statement when they put in. So that, I'm sorry, I broke with reading. Ana Navarro, if you haven't heard, this was something that I didn't think people would say as blatantly as she did on TV, but she apparently made this comment on CNN where she was saying, what about all the people who have, and she was talking about people in her own family, people with autism, Down syndrome, and other mental disorders. She said this causes an undue burden on their parents. That is, in my opinion, an appeal to eugenic level abortion measures. That you're saying, well, what about people who don't want to deal with children who have disabilities, right? And I think I don't like, I mean, well, look, everybody can have an opinion, but I think at certain points, that's an opinion that does dehumanize people with disabilities, right? I have people with disabilities in my family. I know many people in my community who have intellectual disabilities or in some cases physical disabilities they're born with. It's really cynical to conflate the whole abortion debate with this idea that we're going to have a society that's burdened by people with disabilities. And I think there's plenty of people, if you're watching me at home or if you've heard this argument, you certainly hear about issues like this in your own life. I'm sure that you know people who have disabilities. But yeah, I think this really is a question that is going to be debated forever. This is one of the real problems with the protest movement that supports Roe v. Wade and abortion rights, that they conflate this with a blanket abortion ban. Both the dissent and the majority opinion in this case say that now it's up to the states to decide. So people who are very passionate about the right of a woman to choose to have an abortion, they should know that there are states like Massachusetts, like California, that are going to specifically, first of all, they're going to widen their abortion rules. So in some ways, the decision, as hard as it is for pro-lifers to accept, it's actually going to increase in some states the liberty to have an abortion, the freedom to have an abortion, because that's what it does. It returns the decision to the states. Furthermore, there will be this movement for abortion tourism. So there will be women who who are from states like Arizona that have more. You don't think this is going to happen?
That's a very extreme. Who's celebrating the fact that
No, I'm not saying that they're celebrating.
turning into a vacation?
No, it's abortion tourism, meaning that they're going to.
The,
The states are actually telling women to go to their state and have their abortion there. And there are nonprofits that are organizing to fund those trips. So,
mostly the border states anyway that are allowing that. All the internal ones are not going to allow
allowing what?
abortion. They're likely to
You're talking about Arizona?
order. No, not Arizona. Arizona would likely not do abortions, right?
Yeah, but what do you mean by a border state?
On the borders of, like, they're all allowing abortions. So, like California, Oregon, Michigan, Washington.
You mean on the coast?
Well, all the borders of our country.
Okay, so yeah, sorry, I was conferring with my wife. So, basically, the coastal states, yeah, like New Jersey, California, Washington, not Alaska. Alaska is not gonna. Alaska is a very conservative state. So all of those states are going to be enacting legislation that will Hawaii. They will liberalize abortion laws. So you're going to have basically a further division of the states. There will be a lot of states. What do you mean?
For all these states that are like the automatic triggered states and stuff like that, what are they going to do in the case of an emergency where it is necessary? Are they not going to allow it?
I think that they do allow for medical
Is
emergency.
it a law? Or are they
Get
going to allow that in the state?
why don't you get a pair of headphones and join? So anyway, so me and my wife, we've discussed like this topic many times, but the issue is like in the states where abortion will be more restrictive, there is going to be a question: what constitutes an emergency? To what degree do God forbid, there are pregnant women who get into car accidents and things like that, have other issues in their pregnancies. But then in other states, you're going to have very liberalized abortion. Larry's saying that they're going to allow for postpartum abortions. Basically, it's a very scary situation for people of both perspectives, right? Because I personally, I've always had a very pro-life perspective. I think that the more that you permit for procedures like this that like egregiously try to end the life of a patient, and they don't define him as a patient or her as a patient, the fetus, they will come back and they will extend this to all sorts of other procedures that are outrageous and in the name of expediency or removing undue burdens. It will, and it has led to eugenical arguments in the sense that Ana Navarro has put forward. Let me pull up the article so you guys don't think that I'm exaggerating, because it really was like at a certain point you start to lose any expectation of decency from people. So S.E. Cupp, who herself is also from CNN, called her out on this. Um, CNN host and political commentator S.E. Cupp rebuked CNN commentator Ana Navarro after Navarro insisted that Roe v. Wade and abortion rights were necessary for families who might want to terminate special needs children in the womb. Although she's pro-choice, Cupp slammed. Now, let me clarify something for you. Both of these ladies on CNN, Ana Navarro and S.E. Cupp, claim to be conservatives, but they're both pro-choice. And that's one of the things that I think is interesting, that there are still people who are clinging to the pro-choice label. Also, Dave Rubin, by the way, he is still officially pro-choice, but I think many of them look at themselves as people who want abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. The majority of the pro-choice movement left the station of safe, legal, and rare 15, 20 years ago. They were basically saying, no, we have to basically allow abortion to be basically like some sort of virtue, right? That this is some sort of great rite and rite of passage in some cases for this. And there were people who were doing the whole shout your abortion thing only a few years ago. During the segment, guest panelist and GOP strategist Alice Stewart addressed the ardently pro-choice Navarro, saying, "I don't understand how you can deny on the one hand. You can say on one hand you support life, yet you're fine with a woman's choice decision to choose abortion." Navarro punched back hard, stating, "I am not anybody to tell you what you need to do with your life or with your uterus." She then mentioned special needs people and her family, saying, "I have a family with a lot of special needs kids. I have a brother who's 57 and has the mental and motor skills of a 1-year-old. And I know what that means financially, emotionally, physically for a family, and I know not all families can do it." So, anyway, this is it's a debate that's going to keep happening for many years. Now let's look at what happened in Arizona. Tear gas used at Roe v. Wade protest disrupts last hours of 2022 Arizona legislature. So let's see if we can get some video of this.
Where's our guy? 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 Where's our guy?
Yeah, but did Roe v. Wade solve the problem? It didn't solve the problem. It just said you could have it. That they could abort a special needs child?
Don't listen to me. Don't rub your eyes. Just let the water do that. Okay. Slow down and breathe. It's okay.
Yeah, but this has nothing to do with secular or not secular.
Don't listen to me. Don't rub your eyes. Just let the water do that. Okay. Slow down and breathe. It's okay.
So while we were watching that footage, which didn't really help at all.
Well, as the mask mandate.
So my wife was saying, really, that was something where if you have a person who is expecting a special needs child, and they have them and they're not prepared to have them, there are cases where they'll kill the child after they're born, right? And that, so she was saying to me that
Or there's countries where one particular sex is preferred over another. They kill the sex they don't want so they can have another baby.
yeah, but so anyway, so her point is that, she's talking like in India they kill the girls, like if they wanted a boy, or in China. That doesn't, but yeah, there's people who kill their kids for all sorts of reasons. It's illegal to kill your child. That's still, it's also against the law. You're not.
Either way, you're killing a life, but one, is more severe.
Right. And I think that. So then another point that she brought up before, was that she believes that this is basically it's eliminating like the secular impartiality of the law, because in a number of states where there'll be very restrictive abortion not rulings, but laws. For example, Utah's under basically very heavy influence of the Church of Latter-day Saints. So, is this basically eliminating the separation of church and state? That's really that's kind of speculation. So if you have the majority of residents vote for state legislators who make a decision to impose a law that is constitutional in every other sense, but it also has the interest of a particular religious stream in it, is that unconstitutional? That's a debate that's been on since Roe v. Wade was in place, because what's the biggest body that's opposed abortion? The Roman Catholic Church. People have always said we don't want the Roman Catholic Church to be too influential in American politics. That's always been a big thing. But at the same time, Roe v. Wade, okay, this is something that I think everybody acknowledges. I don't know if you have read Roe v. Wade either, but or now the decision that's overturned it. But Roe v. Wade was basically extending the Fourth Amendment to an area that hadn't really been an application of it, meaning that your right to privacy, to divulging certain information, was extended to a procedure that was up until then illegal in a number of states, meaning that like in a state like let's say New Hampshire had back in 1970 a law prohibiting abortion, right? The Supreme Court was saying, well, they don't really have the right to intrude on that. Yeah.
Do you think this is going to somehow affect vaccination statuses, etc.? And it's more of we're all focusing on the fact that it's obliterating, the right to abortion, but it's really about maybe mandating vaccines.
So okay, that's a doozy of a question. So my wife was asking, do I think that this decision will open the door for legalizing vaccine mandates? You're saying?
Sure, it's taking away the right to privacy of your medical information. Is this going to affect HIPAA?
Is this going to affect HIPAA, etc.? Well, no, I don't think it will. So basically, the main concern, and she and I have, like on abortion, we have a number of disagreements. On the issue of vaccination mandates, I think we're mostly the same opinion, which is that it is a violation of patients' rights and liberties. So basically, I would say that the two issues are related, but it's not like it's automatically the same. Meaning that there's going to continue to be states, like there is in New York, that will require vaccination status, and there still have been, even during the time of Roe v. Wade. There were states that had laws that required you to attend a game with a vaccination. Well, they're being filtering through the courts.
Roe v. Wade is a potential that could not have been the case.
I think that it's like what Roe v. Wade was doing. So let me see if I can organize my thoughts here. So Roe v. Wade was saying that no state could make a law restricting the right of a woman to have an abortion. The problem with Roe v. Wade was that it was a court basically trampling over the rights of states to legislate medical procedures. So if, let's say, the federal government had come in and they'd passed an amendment that would say that state governments cannot abridge abortion, the Supreme Court wouldn't be able to sustain that. Like Roe v. Wade was the whole problem, that they created this constitutional right out of thin air. In terms of vaccination status, a lot of the arguments that were used in order to knock down the ones that were happening over in the fall related to religious belief, protected by the First Amendment, and also to privacy issues like HIPAA. HIPAA is a federal law. That's the difference here. So if you're talking about HIPAA being struck down by Roe v. Wade, well, HIPAA is a law. Roe v. Wade was always a court case. So it's kind of an apples and oranges situation. But yeah, vaccine mandates is going to be a big legal debate for years to come. So anyway, talking to you guys too. No, thanks for the questions. She has an argument. There's something for you guys to hash out. Use this, not unrelated. So actually, Larry Gerke is a lawyer. He's in my chat. So he is probably, as a Californian, he's saying that they are going to legalize things like postpartum abortions. That will also be a big legal battle. So certainly not a settled issue, not by far. Let me see if I can find this Arizona riot. So okay, so here's from Channel 12 News, Phoenix. Oops.
We're starting with breaking news as flashbangs and tear gas go off in downtown Phoenix. That's where protesters had gathered at the state capitol, voicing their frustration over today's Supreme Court ruling.
The High Court reversed Roe versus Wade, giving states the power to make their own abortion laws. Team 12's Bianca Bono is joining us live from the Arizona State Capitol. And Bianca, this started as a peaceful rally, but then at some point, DPS declared it an unlawful gathering.
That's right, Caribe. Really, the past hour and a half, it was complete chaos here at the Arizona State Capitol. And you're right, around 7 o'clock, it started as a peaceful protest with thousands of women coming together to march for their reproductive rights. And we'll show you what the scene is now. It's a complete ghost town. That's because DPS did declare an unlawful assembly and began shooting tear gas from the Capitol. Take a look at the scene. You could see large clouds of smoke from the tear gas that was deployed in the flashbangs that we were hearing, dispersing the crowd. We saw some with small children running from the Capitol. Now, according to DPS, what triggered this response was protesters began banging on the glass doors of the Senate building. A spokesperson said, quote, protesters attempted to break the glass. Now, troopers then came out in riot gear after deploying tear gas from the Capitol building. DPS says some protesters then moved to Wesley Bullen Plaza, where some monuments were vandalized. An unlawful assembly was declared, and all of this was happening as lawmakers were inside the Senate ready to vote on a school voucher bill. Here's Senate President Karen Fann as all of this was happening.
Please listen, we are going to recess. We're going into recess right now, okay? We have a security problem outside. Members, please go, stop. We're recessed.
Now,
So that's interesting. As she was saying that there's a security issue at the Arizona Senate, there were members of the Arizona Senate that were yelling, "Let them in." Is that aiding and abetting an insurrection? They were accusing the Republican lawmakers of on January 6th? Is that? I mean, is it? I mean, if you're saying let in these insurrectionists, then does that mean that these Arizona Democrats are basically they should be hauled away by the FBI? I think that question needs to be explored. So anyway, we'll keep watching.
Prior to all of that, thousands of people protested and marched in response to the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. We saw families and people of all ages, some who have never lived a life without the right to an abortion. For others, this is deja vu.
I just never thought I'd see this day. I mean, I fought for abortion rights in the 60s, early 70s. I never expected to be here 50 years later.
I'm very concerned not only with abortion rights and women's rights and health care, but also all the implications for all the other rights that have flown from the court's decisions.
For my daughter, you know,
I want her to be able to have the choice if she ever needs to make that choice one day. And it's a right. It's been taken away. It's not okay.
I think it's great that all these people showed up because that really gives people like a view of how many who care about it and to really just highlight the majority.
I cried, literally tears coming down my face. It just doesn't feel like it's real life.
I cried when Arizona Planned Parenthood said they were going to be stopping abortions. That's when it really became real.
So that woman just says she cried when Planned Parenthood of Arizona said they're going to stop doing abortions. Well, now they can give all those other services that they care about so much. They always say, oh, we don't only do abortions. We do all these other things. Well, now they can still do that. Right?
And back out here live, this is a live look of the law enforcement presence that's still here outside the state capitol in the plaza there, but no sign of any protesters at this point. Again, really all of that happened about an hour and a half ago. And I'm not sure if you could see it in the video there, but at one point, the top of a palm tree outside the capitol was on fire, it seemed. We're not sure what caused that, but the Phoenix Fire Department showed up and put that out pretty quickly, guys.
Bianca, we know that State Senator Michelle Ugenti-Rita was inside at the time, and on Twitter she posted a video that showed, or what seemed to show, some of the protesters kicking in a window that looked like it gave way. Do we know if at any point people got inside the building?
At this point, that's unclear to us. According to DPS, the reason that they took those measures, they took those steps with the tear gas and the flashbangs was because protesters were attempting to break the glass, in their words. So at this point, we're not sure if anyone did make it inside, but DPS didn't indicate that in their initial statement to us.
All right, Bianca, I'm hearing from a lot of folks on Twitter tonight. I posted Michelle Ugenti-Rita's video, and they're telling me on Twitter that this was a peaceful demonstration. And you can understand people being skittish after what happened at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. But they say that this was unprovoked with the flashbangs and the tear gas. From your vantage point, did it seem to be an overreaction, or were you not there at that point?
It's hard to say. I was not at the front where those protesters were up against the glass. The media is kind of staged in a parking lot at this hour across the street at 17th Avenue in Jefferson. So I didn't see with my own eyes what was happening there in the front. I did see Senator Michelle Ugenti-Rita's video showing the protesters up against the glass, banging on the glass. And that seems to be what DPS was referring to in their statement to me, explaining what triggered that response. But what I did see earlier today was certainly peaceful, with thousands of women marching around the area of the Capitol. But again, Mark, we were not right up against the glass when all of that was happening. And I can see why it would have been scary for folks like Senator Michelle Ugenti-Rita, who was just on the other side of the glass. But it didn't appear that glass was broken. Again, DPS did mention that maybe some monuments.
Okay, so I was also reminded by my wife that President Biden has signed gun reform legislation, and let me just say I am against any gun reform legislation, period, except any legislation that would give more people. Oh, that'll take years to figure out. I don't know. Yeah, so she was saying, well, do I think it's going to stand or not? I don't know, because I think one of the provisions. Well, let's read what it says. But I know one of the provisions changes the age, in terms of the background checks. So there's some sort of waiting period. So new gun control legislation. Let's see what it says. Okay. Biden signs gun safety bill into law, takes swipe at Supreme Court. So, President Joe Biden on Saturday signed into law the first major federal gun reform in 3 decades, days after a decision he condemned by the Supreme Court expanding firearm owners' rights. God willing, it's going to save a lot of lives, Biden said at the White House after signing the bill with his wife Jill by his side. The bipartisan bill came together just weeks after mass shootings in Uvalde and Buffalo that killed more than 30 people, including 19 children at an elementary school. The law includes provisions to help states keep guns out of the hands of those deemed to be a danger to themselves or others. So what this refers to, and my wife also hinted at it, is that now states are basically going to get funding, I guess, to enforce red flag laws if they implement them. And that's actually a major point of contention in my state, Ohio. There have been proposals to do red flag laws. I don't think that it will pass the legislature because we have, I think, even a super majority of Republicans. So, and here in Ohio, they really don't, like, I guess there's always people who are like weaklings, but they have been very consistent in, supporting gun rights because there's so many owners here that they would basically be doing career suicide by signing on to any of this legislation. The Supreme Court has made some terrible decisions, Biden told reporters after that ruling, and another on Friday that eliminated the right to abortion nationwide. Gun control has long been a divisive issue in the nation, with several attempts to put new controls on gun sales failing every time after time. Biden, who is looking to improve sagging public approval ratings ahead of November 8th midterm elections for control of Congress, made securing victories on gun control a part of his campaign pitch to voters. The new law blocks gun sales to those convicted of abusing unmarried intimate partners. So that's an interesting one. Blocks gun sales to those convicted of abusing unmarried intimate partners. So that means the boyfriend loophole is out. That's, I think, what they were calling it in the press. I guess one loophole you had until now, let's say that you were living with somebody else and you beat them and you had like a pending a conviction for assaulting a domestic partner but was not married to them. Now you cannot own a weapon, or you can't buy a weapon.
But you can anyway if you had any kind of domestic issue on your record.
Apparently not. It also provides new federal funding to states that administer, quote, red flag laws intended to remove guns from people deemed dangerous to themselves and others. Now that is exactly. So the problem with that is this preemptively removes firearms from people who have not been convicted of a crime yet. So that is a big problem. Yeah. Pre-crime. You ever seen Minority Report? It does not ban sales of assault-style rifles or high-capacity magazines. But it does take some steps on background checks by allowing access for the first time to information on significant crimes committed by juveniles. I think that might be an acceptable provision. At this time, when it seems impossible to get anything done in Washington, we are doing something consequential. If we can reach compromise on guns, we ought to be able to reach compromise on other critical issues, Biden said before traveling to Germany for the Group of 7 Rich Nations Summit. I know there's much more work to do and I'm never going to give up, but this is a monumental day. He said he would host families of gun violence victims and lawmakers at a White House event on July 11th to mark the passage of the gun safety law. So there you have it. I don't know whether it's going to stand. Obviously, there could be some roadblocks to it. Let me see here. So any other comments? So Larry is saying, glad she wasn't my mom, bad mine was bad enough, he says. Oh, I think he's referring to the lady in the video. So any other topics for tonight? I want to remind you, so I did write a newsletter yesterday that was published yesterday, and you can read it. I put it in the description. I just put it in the chat as well. And all I'm going to say is that the person who called me, said that I was basically doing the work of the enemy for criticizing the group Democratic Majority for Israel. still has not apologized, even though he's not read the article, doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. This article, I didn't really have it up on the screen yesterday, but it goes into a lot of the detail about how this group, they're completely full of shit. They don't know, they don't actually do anything in order to accomplish the goal they're talking about. All they do is they spread sort of innuendo about candidates in order to prevent them from getting elected, because they might be vocal opponents of the Israel-America relationship. But once they get into Congress, Democratic majority for Israel doesn't do anything. They're not really campaigning very strongly at all against candidates like Ilhan Omar. Why? Because they know it's not going to work, and because she's basically untouchable at this point. She has won enough power within the Democratic Party that they don't dare actually do anything to fight her. All they'll do is maybe once in a while they'll complain. So their whole mission of saving the Democratic Party for the sake of the America-Israel relationship is idiotic. It's something that they've already failed at. So I go through a lot of the big problems with the party as a whole too, but they've already failed in this respect in 2 seats. One was the 12th district of Pennsylvania, where they supported the candidate Steve Irwin against a progressive named Summer Lee. She won by a razor-thin margin. Now, look, good for them for trying, but they can basically, the left, the far left, they can basically wave the flag of victory that they beat a much better funded and better supported candidate who was supported by a very pro-Israel group. It validates their whole premise that it's big money that is supporting this viewpoint. So this defeat, it's actually something that I think it was going to be inevitable, but they did make it at least close. Now in another district in Oregon, the 5th district, they got the doors blown off of them because they supported a very centrist / conservative Democrat named Kurt Schrader, who lost by 14.2% to a progressive. So all I'm saying is that this group is embarrassing itself. They're not actually accomplishing anything. You also have in Maryland next month is going to be a race concerning Donna Edwards. So she's been very vocally against, in some cases, that she's been against the Israel supporting organizations, and they've tried to, of course, knock her off. She's running to get her old seat back. She was serving in Congress until 2017. So she ran for Senate a few years ago, and now she is running again for the House. Let me see here. I guess there is no video about it. But at one point she would not support a resolution in Congress that supported Israel's right to defend itself in Operation Cast Lead in 2008. Now this time she is running with the support of Nancy Pelosi. And Nancy Pelosi, this is according to AIPAC, to The Intercept. Let me I'm not joining The Intercept. They want me to give them my email address in order to read their stupid article. Here we go. So, the latest foray into Democratic Party primaries by the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, or AIPAC, is targeting former Maryland Representative Donna Edwards, a progressive who is running to represent Maryland's 4th Congressional District a seat she held from 2008 to 2017. The contest between Edwards and corporate attorney Glenn Ivey had been relatively quiet. This week, the race was upended when United Democracy Project, an AIPAC-aligned super PAC that has spent millions to thwart the campaigns of progressive women of color, put big money behind an ad accusing Edwards of poor constituent services during her previous tenure in Congress. On Friday, Edwards' campaign held a press conference outside the headquarters of the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 689, one of several local labor unions that have endorsed her bid, where Edwards blasted Ivey for accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars in outside spending from corporate interests that are fueled by AIPAC. After Edwards condemned AIPAC and its allies' intervention, a number of her supporters, including elected officials, labor leaders, and constituents, also rebuked the ad's content. One critic in particular stood out: House Speaker Nancy Pelosi of California. And apparently she recorded a video here, so let's watch this.
When Donna Edwards first represented Maryland's 4th Congressional District, and that was for nearly a decade, she was one of the most effective members in Congress. Donna fought hard for Prince George's County, for jobs and investments in her community, to help constituents in need, and to deliver results. As Speaker and then as leader, I knew I could always count on Donna Edwards as a valued member of our leadership team. We face some uphill battles ahead, and we need Donna back in Congress to fight for our progressive values and to deliver for Maryland. And as a Maryland native, I'll be thrilled to see a woman once again as part of the Maryland congressional delegation. Thank you.
Okay, so there you have Nancy Pelosi, the most powerful Democrat in the House, standing up against AIPAC, thanks to their stupid campaign against this woman. They've basically stepped on the toes of the most powerful Democrat in Congress. And this is the position that I'm putting forward. Stop trying to save this shithole of a party. Just move on. You can vote Republican if you want. If not, just don't vote, or vote for one of these other wacko parties. There's a race in the 11th district there's like a number of districts that I will put forward some ideas where you could, vote for other people. In Pennsylvania, for example, I think people are going to be put out by a number of real problematic issues with candidates, like with Dr. Oz. So, it's not an easy choice, but you don't have to just reflexively support the Democratic Party. And that's one of the real problems with this group, Democratic Majority for Israel, that they're idiots. They think that the whole relationship between Israel and the United States depends on saving the Democratic Party. You had the chance to save them and you failed. It's already done. So all I want to do is I want to call out this guy who I've been friends with for several years. He goes by the nickname The Mossad, and he is on the Juminati YouTube channel. And he basically said that my piece that I was writing to criticize this organization, which carries water for all of the disgusting politics of the Democratic Party, I was criticizing the fact that they have been dishonestly and viciously using the cause of, the pro-Israel relationship, the pro-Israel tendency in the United States. They've been exploiting it in order to support their candidates, who in many cases are very mediocre people like Bob Menendez Jr., who shouldn't be in the House. The only qualification he has for getting into politics is that his dad is Senator Bob Menendez. A lot of these morons who have been involved in, quote, saving the Democratic Party are people who are looking the other way at other candidates who are incumbents and have long been in stable positions. People like Keith Ellison and Betty McCollum. And years ago, Alan Dershowitz threatened that he would quit the party if Keith Ellison was selected as the chair of the Democratic National Committee. Well, now he's the Attorney General of Minnesota. Alan Dershowitz still hasn't quit the party because that's what's more important to him. The party is more important than any position that he takes on any issue. All the time he complains about the civil liberties that are being violated and how the Democratic Party isn't really supporting due process anymore. And what does he do in the end? He votes for Joe Biden because he's a good man. He's a good man. Jack, let's get some ice cream. So that's about it for today. What? What do you mean? It's because it's Biden. Oh. Oh. Anyway, have a good night, and please, keep commenting and sharing and liking. You can find all of my social media links in the link tree, in the description, as well as the newsletter, and have a great night.
Give what you can, even if your eye lost your lines in the sand, and dig. Always dig a little deeper. Sometimes it's hard to be my brother's keeper. Love, so you let love in. Baby, I am home in the wake of your skin, and it's crazy how we wear a ceremony. Always be open to your path and your journey. Yes, she cradles my loneliness. A home in a forest nest. Universal test, feel the weight of my love. Put your hand on my chest and rest. In the cradle of my arms, the battle that we face is a place where our scars come from. And to pick up the gun, my love, we are destined to teach these ones to be brave and never run away. Courage is birthed from the womb on the first light of day. Yeah, the day you were born, you came out perfect, never meant to be torn in silence. Never been so loud in the violence, never been so proud of our people. When we're fighting for a change, not afraid to lose it all, despite all the rage. We are animals, and we cannot be caged. Provoke us to fight, so we burn a little sage and write poetry. Wiser than the enemy will ever be. The minority and authority. Are you here to protect or arrest me? I can't tolerate the hate, and I'm losing sleep. Can't breathe, cause they're choking out a war in me. Immorality, yeah. Love letters. The hate, and I'm losing sleep. Can't I wonder if she reads them, or if they get lost in the stars, in the stars. So many parts to a heavy heart. If there's no beginning, then where would you start? Where would you start? Human souls, so we carve them into story, totem poles. Cause we're always searching for a certain goal, a pattern of physics, a rule. Don't believe how you're told, and open up your fist. A misconception, you can fight like this and praise. With the power of prayer, of God's on our side, we can take the stairs to the heavens. Flipping to my chapter 7, I live with the snakes and the great deception, no court. In this country for men who steal from the mother on paper with pen, and we're tripping down a red dirt road, and we're asking, is this the way we should go?